Welcome once again to another video from the spiritualabuse.org website. This is the second installment in our series on books that are helpful in recovering from spiritual abuse. If you have been in an abusive or an unhealthy church, it is very important to educate yourself about spiritual abuse and the ways in which such churches and groups operate. As with the first video, I have chosen to feature both a Christian and a secular book. The first one is the Christian one, which is Healing Spiritual Abuse: How to Break Free from Bad Church Experiences. And also on the cover is the Biblical Answer to the Wounds of Legalism, and that is written by Ken Blue. The second one, the secular one, is Cults in Our Midst: The Hidden Menace in Our Everyday Lives by Margaret Singer with Janja Lalich. If you are interested in purchasing either or both of these books, and if you do so through Amazon, please consider accessing Amazon first via any of the links to there from the spiritualabuse.org website, and then add any items that you want to purchase to your cart. If you do so, you'll help us to help others who have been involved in an unhealthy church. I am doing the same with this video as I did with the first, and will show you pictures of the front and the back covers of both books, as well as their content pages, so that you can get an idea of what each of the book covers. I also will be reading excerpts to give you more of a feel for both books. Please feel free to pause the video at any time so that you can better read what you see on your screen. Now, just another word, as I mentioned in the first video, many people have been scared away from reading things that are not Christian, that are of a secular origin. They've been scared away from things dealing with psychology or seeing a therapist or counselor. Please try to push past that as you recover from being in an unhealthy church. There are things that are in these books that can be very helpful to you in your recovery. And if there's things in it that you don't agree with, then you just set them aside and take from the books what is helpful to you. Now, with Cults in Our Midst, the same thing is with that book as what happened with Captive Hearts and Captive Minds. There's two versions of it. The first one that Margaret Singer wrote was copyright in 1995. And then she came out in 2003 with a revised and an updated edition. And as you saw previously on the screen, the revised edition has it clearly stated on the cover that it's a revised and updated edition. So if you are looking to get the book and you want to get the newer version, pay attention to that part. She updates things in the book and adds information on groups like Heaven's Gate, Hare Krishnas, the Reverend Moon, and the connection between cults and terrorism in Al-Qaeda and the PLO. The first book I'm going to be reading excerpts from is Healing Spiritual Abuse by Ken Blue. I'm going to be reading from two different places in the book. The first one is from the chapter entitled Healthy Church Leadership. Abusive leaders, according to Jesus, take for themselves authority and power based on position and office. By contrast, healthy leaders shun honorific titles and are effective in caring for the needs of God's people. It is by servant leadership that the non-abusive leader exercises influence. Abusive leaders oppress and manipulate men and women by tying up heavy loads and laying them on their shoulders. They multiply rules and regulations to induce guilt and shame in their followers in order to control them. Non-abusive leaders lift those burdens off, directing their followers to Jesus Christ for rest and for yokes that are light and fit well. Abusive leaders do everything for show. They take exalted titles, demand special privileges, and insist on playing by different rules. They flaunt external symbols of spirituality, but on the inside, they are spiritually dead. They use words deceitfully for self-promotion. It is important for them to look and sound like men and women of God than to actually be men and women of God. Healthy leaders, by contrast, spend no time or energy on their image. They live simply and transparently before people. They say what they mean and mean what they say. Abusive leaders invert spiritual values. They major on minor issues while minimizing people's significant needs. They are scrupulous, religious performers while neglecting justice and mercy. Non-abusive leaders, on the other hand, stand ready to jettison religious protocol when it conflicts with real human need. They major on majors. The second part of the book that I'm going to read is from the chapter called Healed by Grace, under the section of What to Do Now. It says, reading this book, you may have concluded that your church has problems but is not abusive. The problems it faces are the result of social forces other than spiritual abuse. Others of you have discovered that beyond a doubt, your church is significantly abusive. You must now decide whether you should stay and fight for change or leave. Others are still wondering. Your church may show some symptoms of being an abusive group, but not all of them. It may have virtues that seem to compensate for its possible abuses. To aid in assessing your church and deciding what you should do, let's briefly review the symptoms of abusive religion according to Jesus in Matthew 23. 1. Abusive leaders base their spiritual authority on their position or office rather than on their service to the group. Their style of leadership is authoritarian. 2. Leaders in abusive churches say one thing but do another. Their words and deeds do not match. 3. They manipulate people by making them feel guilty for not measuring up spiritually. They lay heavy religious loads on people and make no effort to lift those loads. You know that you are in an abusive church if the loads just keep getting heavier. 4. Abusive leaders are preoccupied with looking good. They labor to keep up appearance. They stifle any criticism that puts them in a bad light. 5. They seek honorific titles and special privileges that elevate them above the group. They promote a class system with themselves at the top. 6. Their communication is not straight. Their speech becomes especially vague and confusing when they are defending themselves. And 7. They major on minor issues to the neglect of the truly important ones. They are conscientious about religious details, but neglect God's larger agendas. And now we turn to cults in our midst, and I am reading from the chapter entitled Leaving the Cult. When a person is taken in by the coercive psychological and social influence of a cult, she or he experiences what I call the 5 Ds. 1. Deception in the recruitment process and throughout membership. 2. Debilitation because of the hours, the degree of commitment, the psychological pressures, and the inner constriction and strife. 3. Dependency as a result of being cut off from the outside world in many ways. 4. Dread because of beliefs instilled by the cult that a person who leaves will find no real life on the outside. 5. Desensitization, so that things that would once have troubled them no longer do. For example, learning that money collected from fundraising is supporting the leader's lavish lifestyle, rather than the cause for which it was given, or seeing children badly abused or even killed. All of these factors, which I expand on in the rest of the chapter, enmesh, and work together to keep the cult member from seeing a way out. Belief. Among the many influences that reinforce the difficulty a cult member has in getting up and walking out, belief is probably the starting point. Your belief or sense of commitment is a very powerful force, whether that belief relates to a specific god or religion, a certain brand of politics, animal rights, living in the country and being free, your family, or the existence of magic. Being able to carry out their beliefs and act on their ideas is very appealing to people. It seems to be the normal human condition that we want to believe in something. We need beliefs that help us understand our universe. In the world of cults, belief becomes the glue that binds that person to the group. You begin to go along with things, no matter what group you are in, because you believe in the group. You believe in the goals and in the people who are doing those things with you. You believe in the leader. You believe you are going to accomplish something. In most cults, you are told that, in order to live out the group's belief, you must make certain changes in yourself. So you say, okay, I can accept that. I believe this. I agree with it, and I'll make those changes. And slowly, those changes begin to have a radical effect on your thoughts and actions, though you are not highly conscious of this effect. Then it does go on in the book to mention other things in this same chapter. It talks about decency and loyalty, authority figures, peer pressure and lack of information, exhaustion and confusion, separation from the past, fear, guilt over participation. I hope that you have found this video to be helpful in better understanding the two books and the differences between them, and possibly even be helped just from the excerpts that were read. And for those that are watching that may not be aware, we do offer 2 online support groups. We've been operating support groups since the year 2000. The URL for the main one that's on Facebook is on the screen as I speak. If you do decide that you want to join, please read the About section on it, as it further explains about the group and some things that are allowed and not allowed. We are Christian based, though if you are not Christian, you are more than welcome to join. We just ask that you respect that it is a Christian group. Thank you for taking the time to watch. And as always, we hope that everyone that has been involved in an unhealthy church gets all the help that they need in sorting through all of the issues that are involved, and that you find healing after your experience.